it says preparing to live stream, but oftentimes it's already streaming by this point. So
Okay.
how are you just real quick. Oh, I can hear okay. All right, looks like it worked. Looks like it worked, and we're live now. All right, Professor, thank you so much for joining me today. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's watching, welcome to Park Narcs. And if you think I look a little odd right now, that's because, well, I probably do. That's fine. Um, I I am here with my good buddy, the Professor, David D. Perlmutter. Professor, how's it going?
Very good. I don't see any difference. This is the way I know you dress in everyday life at
Yeah.
your job. So,
Yeah, this is typical for me. I think a lot of people are confused about that. They'll be like, "Wait, why does he look like this right now?" Well, it's because basically every other day I dress up like this just to remind myself that the future can be so much better. You know what I mean? We can have these really stupid haircuts and we could wear pajamas all day.
well, you're too young to remember this, but some people who are Star Trek fans and older, just look it up on Google or ChatGPT or whatever. But there was a case years ago, I think decades ago, where a person was serving jury duty, and they wore their Star Trek officer's uniform to jury duty. And I think
Is
there
that
was a
real?
lawsuit associated with it. Like she said, I can, there's no dress code. I'm dressed formally, and this is who I am. I'm a Star Trek officer, Federation. So I think she was allowed to sit on the jury. So, there's case law that this is fine. You're doing great.
Yeah, exactly. There's case law behind this. Whatever I do, there's always case law behind it. So today we are gathered. The reason I'm dressed like this is because today, only a few days ago, was the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. So we are gathered on a kind of a fun day, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite episodes of the original series. Now, if you haven't seen it, don't worry because we're going to go over the plot real quickly. But it's called A Taste of Armageddon. And it's from the first season, it's the 23rd episode, and it's pretty incredible. So if you're cool with it, Professor, I'll just go through the story real quick, and you can interject, stop me, and interject anytime that you want. So basically, the Enterprise shows up to a star cluster where there's a series of planets, and they talk to what they call the principal planet, which I don't know if that means the first one. I'm assuming it does, but it's the one that's supposed to be like the most important one or whatever, and it's called Aminiar 7. And when they send a message to Aminiar 7, and they have a guy on board, an ambassador named Robert Fox, when they message Aminiar 7 says, "Code 710. Do not come here. Go away." Now, they normally the Enterprise would do that, but Robert Fox, I believe the guy's name, says no. We're going down there because we need to get a spaceport in this area, and so we have to talk to them no matter what. And so he kind of forces them down. And when they get down there, they beam down. It's Kirk, Spock, and three red shirts. And Kirk is like, "Hey, what's up? We're here to be diplomatic." And the guy explains to him, "We're in a war, and that's why we cannot open diplomatic channels with you because we're busy with the war." And Spock and Kirk are very confused because there's no radioactive readings in the planet. There's no sound of explosions. There's nothing. Actually, according to them, it's an extremely advanced planet. It has really good technology and it's very peaceful. And so Spock says, "I don't know what you're talking about. There's no war." And the guy says, "There is a war." And then they go, "Oh, and the city just got hit. And you guys are casualties." It's like, what? And they explain that they have a simulation in the computer, that they have a war with a neighboring planet called Vendikar, and that it's been going on for 500 years, and that the way that they have learned to deal with that war is to just go, "Okay, we don't want to destroy our buildings and our culture, basically capital, like anything that kind of creates the entire world. We don't want to destroy that. We want to be able to live in houses, but we want to keep killing each other because that's very important to us." And so they built a simulation system that allows them to say, okay, this many people got killed, this many people didn't. Instead of doing what you would think, which is that they just that's it, that's the only thing. No, they make you, if you're on the casualty list, they make you walk into a disintegration machine, which is pretty crazy. Like I didn't expect the first time I saw this that it would be that specific, and it is. And there's certain words you can't use on YouTube, but we'll just say you get disintegrated. You disintegrate yourself, and you walk into the machines. And Kirk and Spock, of course, will not do that because that's crazy. Why would they do that? So Kirk basically fights back. In the meantime, Anon 7, the guy who's in charge of the Mini R7, he contacts the Enterprise and says, come down, and pretends to be Kirk. And Scotty, because the guy says everybody go down on shore leave, Scotty knows this isn't Kirk. Kirk would never tell every single person to come down on shore leave. So he uses the analysis, the computer analysis, and the computer's like, that ain't Captain Kirk. He's like, okay, all right. So something weird's going on here. And then they start firing on the ship. It's like, okay, this definitely is not a good situation. And the really weird thing is the ambassador says, okay, let's just go down there. And he's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And the ambassador orders them to go down there. And then the ambassador gets taken. They're like, the ambassador, I'm sorry, you're a casualty, which is really weird because you would think they would kind of use him for something, but whatever. And then Kirk kind of breaks away and he destroys one of the machines. It's one of my favorite parts of the episode. He destroys one of the disintegration machines. And this woman who's there called Mia, I think, or Maya, she says, you can't do that. He goes, I've done it. I've done it. And he just blows it up. And basically, long story short, Kirk deliberately forces the Aminiarites, people of Aminiar, to stop what they're doing. He destroys their machines and he forces them into a position where they're like, we're not going to be able to send the fake bombs now. We're not going to be able to tell them that we disintegrated people. That means a real war is about to start. And Kirk says the most cool thing ever, which is good, because then maybe you'll stop it. I suggest you get to work on a ceasefire. Those are the bare bones of the episode. Professor, did I get everything right?
Yes, and I'm glad you picked this episode. It's such a rich one. I am not old enough to have watched the show when it was first on the air, but I remember watching this in the 70s in reruns. And as your viewers may know, this was not a time that you watched anything, TV, movies, books, or something, where you had a lot of commentary before you watched it. So I had never read anything about Star Trek except like a TV Guide article that there was talk about how popular the show was in reruns, and so still most of the episodes were new
Your
to me.
your reception is getting a little choppy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Might do. Maybe that's just on my end.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a problem before, and I'm happy to switch to another situation. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I watched the show in the 70s,
Right.
and I was blown away as a kid watching this because first it was talking about really scary adult level topics that you didn't associate with fun adventure shows, right? So Star Trek,
Right.
one of its many brilliances was that it was able to be attract different kinds of audiences, right? And it
Right.
was done during a period when TV networks in the 60s, they wanted numbers of eyeballs. Right? So they really just cared about the total number of people watching. Unfortunately, it never got a huge audience, and so it was canceled. But in retrospect, they discovered, which we've discovered through the present day, that it was very popular with certain demographics, including young people. And if
Right.
you were a young person in the 1970s, you couldn't help but feel this oppression that you could be blown up at any time, right? Do I need to switch to another modality? Because I can see you're freezing.
So I think it's, can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Crap. I think it's just me now. Um, Hopefully Professor Perlmutter is about to rejoin. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, while we're figuring out what's going on with Professor Perlmutter, um, I'll just say that if you want to get a Spock outfit really quick at the last second, um, Amazon will get you one, but it's not going to be the one you want. It's not going to be the one you want. So you might want to be more prepared than my foolish self was. And also, this does not work. Look, it's like it's the whole ear, and then it's like this small of a hole. Like, how are you supposed to? What am I supposed to do with that? What am I? How am I supposed to do with that? It's terrible. There we go. And I also have another guest here.
Oh, okay. I think is my video coming through? Because I can't see
It
my
looks like I see a snowy mountain.
yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay.
There we
I just had to
go.
press it.
There we go.
So okay. So
No worries.
you
Much
know,
better.
if this
Much
was
better.
Star Trek, I would claim there was some interference. Anyway, and I'm sorry, I'm still adjusting to my new setup here, but so in
No
the
worries.
70s, we were still living in this era where we just thought that the world could possibly end. And even if you were a kid, you were aware of that. I mean, there was the famous drills you'd have at school and some other stuff that was going on. Your parents couldn't keep it from you. I mean, very
Right.
few parents, like mine, didn't like discuss nuclear war with me and
Right.
Armageddon, but like it was part of the culture. And certainly I had seen movies like Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove, and then it was referenced in other movies. But the Cold War, the war between the Soviet Union and the United States, was done through a lot of proxy countries, and then the possibility of nuclear war is always part of it. So in the 60s, just like we talked about with the Twilight Zone episode 2, it was part of the zeitgeist that there might be this cataclysmic war which would wipe out Earth. So
Right.
along comes this episode, A Taste of Armageddon. It's
A little
almost
bit.
like a little semi-humorous title, because that you just described that they're fighting a war where you have just enough of Armageddon to have
Yes.
some sense about like the consequences, but they've as they say in the show, they sort of shield themselves from
Yeah.
what are we think are the most obvious consequences of Armageddon, and that is that the actual destruction and the direct death. And they've made
Right.
this sort of pact. Both planets have made this pact with themselves and with the other, which you'd think like, boy, that was the whole origin story of that must be
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty
The whole
interesting.
the whole
Yeah, how they
the
negotiated
short
that.
the short version is they're like, let's not say we did. It's like that's so strange that they came to that
Yeah.
conclusion. And here's what real quick, what I think is so great about it. I find it believable because they say it's been going on for 500 years, which means yeah, by now it's probably just how that's the normal way to do it.
So I have some notes for the people of the planet.
Oh yeah, I do too. Okay,
Uh,
cool.
First, let's admit from the very beginning, it's a fantastic premise. It's one of the most
Yes.
brilliant episodes.
Oh my
It
God.
was in the top 25 of like intelligent television that made you think, right? There's
Yes.
no question
It could
about it. So
I think
anything
you
we
agree.
say are
It could be its own
questions or
novel.
observations, but they're not
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
there's something wrong with the episode. It's a
Right.
brilliant episode, right?
It's
They had a they
I'm
had a
glad.
terribly low budget. That's the other thing we always have to tell people about Star Trek today is that the Star Trek budget, I think the last year Star Trek was on, the last couple of episodes before it was
So
canceled, their budget was down to $70,000 an
so
episode.
I should say the first season had a pretty good budget for
Yeah,
television, but then, like you say, they cut it as it went on.
yeah.
But it's really just has to do with, like, I think the fact that it was the '60s more than anything too, though. They turned the special effects, you know what I mean? The cheapness of them.
Yeah, but even for
Oh,
the 60s,
you're on.
they were
Hold on.
pretty inventive, right? The special
Someone's
effects were
calling because
pretty
they don't know that
clever.
I'm live streaming. And there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought some of them were really good. I mean, I really like the map painting at the beginning. It's like I think it's like the last time in the whole show where you
Yeah.
see someone moving inside of a map painting. Um, and then I don't know, I like the machines and I like the disruptor pistols that they use. But I agree. Someone could complain, and then I think what you're really going to talk about is, does this whole thing make total sense? But go on.
Yeah. So when we say whether something
Is
makes sense or
it
not,
working?
can you hear me?
Oh,
Okay.
I can hear you
Yeah.
now. Okay,
Boy,
sorry.
I just don't know what's going on here, but I may switch to
It
another
might be my
modality. But
internet.
well, anyway, so let's talk about Spock for a minute here, because
Yes.
one of the great decisions made about Star Trek from the very beginning is that they would have these fascinating lead characters who were not stereotypes, but they typified certain sort of personality types and certain attitudes towards the world, right? And
Right.
in cliche, that Spock has no emotions and he's cold and logical and clinical and analytical, and McCoy is like all heart and feelings and emotion, and Kirk is somewhere in between, right? But
Right.
they're all in the end they're friends, and they in the end they all work
Right.
together to solve problems. Now we know that those stereotypes are not 100%. You know, Spock can show feelings of a certain kind. He is sensitive in a certain way. In this
Mhm.
episode, he plays a really interesting role. And that we've talked before, and people have heard before about villains who kind of sort of have a point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the people of this planet, uh, technically, every day they set out to kill millions of people. So, in the planet Earth scale of like whether you're a bad guy on 1 to 11, yes, yesterday I pressed a button which indirectly killed a million people. You would be classified in the villains of history. Yes, right? on or
Most people would
on
say that.
most people would agree. Yeah, you're the baddies. You're
Right.
if you're doing that every day for 500
A
years. That's
million
the other
people.
thing.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. I mean, we do have some questions like if they're killing that many people each day, did they just catch them on a bad day, or is there like a horrendous slaughter every day? In which case, they probably would run
Yeah.
out of people after 500
Yeah.
years. There'd be nobody left. What's the
How
birth
many
rate on this
people?
planet?
How,
Yeah,
how many
and
people are
by
on
the
the
way,
planet? Yeah, exactly.
yeah, what's the birth rate, and what's the motivation to have kids?
Right.
If like
What's the
your
motivation for
nursery
anything?
can be destroyed, and do you have to
So,
put your children into the disintegrator like they were at school
so I,
and the school was wiped
oh my
out?
God. Oh my God. I don't know if there's exceptions. That's the thing. Like, you would think in this episode, you'd think they would give an exception to Kirk. They would be like, well, they didn't mean to be here. But it seems like there's no exceptions, which is kind of insane. And
That's the first thing I thought about was that okay, you know, you your kids go to school and the school is technically hit. So you just march your 7-year-old and your 9-year-old to the disintegration center and say, well, yeah, that's the breaks.
Well, that's why I like that they said it was 500 years, because I can
Yeah.
imagine at the end of 500 years, little kids saying, Daddy, it's my duty to walk into the machine, and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I can see it, as messed up as that is. And that's
In
the
the
thing I want to
remake,
say.
yeah,
Go
in the
ahead. Go
remake,
ahead.
maybe they would do that. That would be some
Yeah.
amazing pathos, right?
First of all, you're 100% right. This idea is so good. This episode is so good. It could be its own science fiction novel. It could be its own film. It's so good. Because of that, I think they ignore some Star Trek continuity stuff, or maybe they just weren't used to it yet. And they just say, we're just going to focus on this story. And so, real quick, they ignore the Prime Directive pretty much the whole episode. Now, you can argue that this situation counters the Prime Directive because they get kidnapped by the people of the Mini R7. So you could argue that that's somehow, but honestly, we didn't mention, I forgot to mention General Order 24. But we'll get to that. We will get to that. Let's stick with a Mini R7. I agree with you that it's a little ridiculous at times, but the 500-year timeline makes it more believable to me that they could get into this position. And I accept, as a matter of conceit, I accept that they hate each other so much that they just want to keep killing it. And there are some people like that on this planet. I think we can all think of some examples.
Yes, actually, that's a great segue to talk about that, is that we have had in the history of humanity many people who were perfectly fine slaughtering other people individually, but also in like mass numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't need 500 years to build up that.
Nope.
They some of them just did it like, okay, sure, Thursday, no problem. Like they didn't need any lead up. Other times there were ideologies that were very powerful that people got caught up in, and that allowed them to, I guess, make the case on why mass murder was something that they would be happy to be part of. 500 years is a long time. Yeah, if you're raised, can you imagine the school system, right? Like from like the earliest days of kindergarten. We did the episode 2 from the Twilight Zone, and we saw some of the great propaganda posters and movie posters that the props department at the Twilight Zone had put up that were very convincing, right? Imagine the propaganda in the school system to tell children from the ages of 3 years old in kindergarten, here's how to spell, and also here's why you should die for the greater glory and the duty to your world, right?
Well, I mean, like, that's a real thing, though, isn't it? Like, that's what's so crazy is, like, there are lots of places like that. And, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just exaggerating, but, like, if someone grew up in the Soviet Union, they were told, like, the Americans want to blow us up. And it's because we're doing the right thing, and they're not. And so in a way, you're like, yeah, maybe we have to get blown up because we're martyrs or whatever for this cause. Like, I could see people kind of going along with that idea. I'm assuming that they think of this contract they've made with Vendikar as higher than the Constitution, higher than the Bible. It must be like the key aspect of their society. But what's so fascinating about this is according to Spock, they have a very advanced society. They have a thriving culture. Now, we see right now today, and I don't want to make exact direct references, but we see places where homes and everything is being destroyed. Now, if you offered those people, hey, what if we sign a contract? You get to keep all your stuff, but every once in a while, some of you get killed. They might actually take that contract. That sounds insane, but I could see it.
Yeah, it sounds insane at the beginning, but again, if you've got 500 years dedicated to an ideology and it's part of everything, all science fiction on television has some conceits that we just sort of accept. Like, for example, an entire planet is all one culture, entire planet is all one government. We know how difficult that is from our planet. I don't know, 500 years from now, but they have accepted this. Spock, I'm going to want to talk about Spock for a moment here.
Oh, he has the
Spock
best
is
line
this analytical lens, right? Okay, so he's looking, and he says that the war system is, quote, extremely sophisticated in its simplicity, end quote. And he's saying that, this sort of works. Again, Spock doesn't. What I think is so ingenious about Spock is that he's often the voice of what I tell my students is comprehensiveness, right?
Right.
You can look at somebody or a cause or a country or a TV show or a movie, a book, and it's rare that they are 100% one thing or another, right? So you
Right.
could find, for want of a better term, good and bad in even the most despicable systems. You could say, well, they built really good submarines. Saying that World War II, Nazi Germany built really good submarines is not in any
The
way
Autobahn.
condoning the
Right.
ideology.
Right.
So, but he is saying that this component, this solution they came up with, is not entirely insane, is not entirely evil, because it
Right.
is, by their own rationale and by a rationale that Spock can appreciate, saying it is shielding, as you said, the majority of the populace and the majority of the infrastructure and the culture. Nobody, no, they don't have to take art treasure. Now, this is what I find interesting. One of the defenses they say is our culture keeps on, right? So here's
Right.
my question. A bomb falls on an art museum. Do you have to take all the art treasures to the disintegrator? She's implying they don't have to
No.
do that. There's
No,
no
you don't.
physical destruction.
Right.
If you remember from older times, we talked about a neutron bomb that would kill people. I
Right.
mean, it's an exaggeration. It's not actually technically true, but it would more use radiation to kill people, but not necessarily buildings.
Right.
So they're saying here that only the people. I mean, I'm guessing like you don't have to take your cat to the disintegrator, right? Like you don't
I
have to
don't think
take
so,
your
but
art
who knows?
treasures. You don't have to take the Constitution. You don't have to take, old football trophies, whatever. Uh,
Right.
just people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's a
Spock
way.
saying, hey, that works if you look at it
It's just,
as
I
a
think
system.
he's saying it's sustainable on a certain level. That he has the best line. There's a few great lines in this, but he has the best line in the episode, which is the guy Anon 7 says, he Spock explains the logic of it, and Anon 7 says, "I'm glad you approve." And then Spock says, "I do not approve. I understand." And it's just as you said, it's comprehension. It's like I get, and by the way, that's kind of a motto of mine. I oftentimes watch my videos, they don't necessarily know exactly where I'm coming from bias wise, and it's because on purpose, because I want to understand more than approve or disapprove of things. And I love that line, and he's totally right. In a way, okay, we have to ask this question. Is Kirk right for what he does in the episode? Because what they're doing kind of sort of is working when they show up. I mean, people are dying. It's horrible, but their society's there. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, it's who is actually right?
And Spock has done this before in other episodes. I was thinking like
Mm.
Corbinite maneuver. Okay.
Oh, that's a great one to mention for this when we get to General
Yeah.
24, General Order 24. But go ahead.
Yeah. And we can bring that in. But Spock looks at the other side and says, I can sort of understand why they're doing this. And then Errand of
Yeah.
Mercy, the Organians, that they seem to just be so passive and so, nonviolent, like they're willing to die, and it's really frustrating. And then we find out that they're super powerful, right? And then the
Right.
Devil in the Dark, one of my favorite all-time episode, The Devil in the Dark.
Mm.
Spock is the one who first makes the case that the Hortas are defending themselves. They're defending their
Right.
eggs. They're completely rational. They're not evil, or they're not the devil. I mean, that again,
Right.
Star Trek always did this sort of play on titles, which I thought was very cute. The
Mm.
Doomsday Machine, which I hope we do as a show in the
That'll be the next one.
analysis. Yeah. The Planet Killer makes sense if your
Mhm.
rationale, if it's a weapon to destroy the enemy, okay, destroy the planet. Then you have no fear of the enemy striking back
Right.
at you. And then the last one, the ultimate computer, the episode, the ultimate, Spock says that the M5 computer's logical performance is just efficient and it makes sense. Again, exactly what you said. He's a science officer, just like you are. Wearing the light blue there, okay? Brings
I
out
got
your
it.
eyes, by the way, Parker. It really
Thank
does.
you.
Um,
Thank you.
and he wants to understand, but understanding is separated from moral judgment. He can make
Right.
a negative moral judgment, but he can make a positive in the sense of a successful understanding.
Right. I wish more people, especially these days in America, could be like Spock, where they just understand something without emotionally responding to it or without um having to say whether or not it's a good thing. Like, just kind of get people. I want to say really quick, Anthony Ruby, thank you for joining us, Anthony. I love to see you always. He says the 500 Years War. Dang, Emperor Charles V at war with all of Europe. I think we blame Columbus now. Professor, does that make any sense to you? I'm not a historian.
Well, Charles the Fifth, yeah, he was oh my gosh, Habsburg, right? Yeah, Spain.
Oh, is he one of the
Uh,
Habsburgs with the?
Not quite. That was before the
Oh,
decline
okay,
there.
gotcha.
But um, yeah, we call World War I, but actually there were wars in the past that involved fighting across different continents, and
Right.
this the 7 Years' War was an example. The War of Austrian Succession was sort of an example, but we've always had some great continuity within nation states where I mean, if you take a look at the Habsburgs, for example, the Habsburg family stayed in power in different places, but technically they were in power for 800 years, right?
Right.
So for 800 years, at least wherever there was a Habsburg, there was an ideology of loyalty to the reigning family. Remember, in these countries, like the Hohenzollerns in Germany, the Romanovs in Russia, and the Habsburgs in Austria-Hungary, you were not just loyal to the nation, you were loyal to the family of the
Mm,
rulers and the ruler themselves. So you pledged loyalty directly to the Russian Empire, but also to the Tsar and to the Romanov family. That we don't have that today. Like, people don't pledge the uh, our military is supposed to obey the orders of the commander in chief, but they are faithful to the Constitution of the United States, right?
right.
So we, in a republic, there's a
That's
separation
supposed to be.
between whoever's in office, but in monarchies, and in constitutional monarchies like England, there that you still see like a ship is, His Royal Majesty's ship, right?
Right.
There. So this goes to this planet, and it's a good question. Is like a lot. Star Trek has never they never really wanted to deal too much. And there's some episodes that deal with religion, but like we don't really know what religion these people have. To some extent, this is their religion, right?
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
belief that the only way to survive is I mean, it's religious, right? You're a martyr. You give up your
They
life for the
they
greater
talk
good.
about Kirk talks about God, but he never mentions Jesus. He never mentions like a specific, I don't think he does anyway. He doesn't mention a specific religion. And I always interpreted it that the Starfleeters in the original series were deist. That was always my interpretation. In the next generation, they suddenly become hardcore atheists, which, don't get me started on Gene Roddenberry changing his own stuff. But in the original, I agree with you though. The Starfleet, people in Starfleet, in a sense, that is its own religion. Even in the original, that is its kind of its own religion because it's everything to them. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah. So we talked last time. There was a great political science scholar who was actually a refugee from Austria after the Nazis took over Austria, and he came to the United States. Ernst Vogelin, and he had this very interesting concept because he had watched the Nazis come to power, and he was anti-Nazi. He was a Protestant, very devout Protestant, Austrian, and anti-Nazi. And he said this was political religion. It was
Right.
politics with all the elements of religion, worshiping a god, martyrdom, faith, things like that, but with all the elements of religion there, except the actual religious part. It was political religion.
Right.
And so in my classification of this planet is that they have a political religion. Because if you think about it, what real religion could they cram into this, right? It's almost like you have no room for real religion.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Like, do you believe that if you're disintegrated, you go somewhere? They don't say any of this. I mean, actually, It probably would be pretty smart to like keep the ideology going, to tell people, oh yeah, if you're disintegrated, you go straight to heaven.
Yeah.
But they don't do
100%.
that.
100%.
Apparently. We don't know enough.
No, that's an extra science fiction element that could have been used in the episode, but I think the reason they don't explain these things is because they just want to focus on the basic idea of like they both agree to this compact. But yeah, I agree. There's no discussion of like how religion affects any of it. And if it was real, they would have a religion that supported the structure. Definitely. Now, real quick, I think obviously this episode is a metaphor for any kind of prolonged conflict that doesn't need to be happening. And what I think is particularly interesting is you can interpret what the simulation and the setup means in different ways. And so I would like to suggest that one possible interpretation of what's happening is kind of like when two countries are at war and they persistently stop, but they don't stop the war. So they persistently have ceasefires or something like that, but then they continuously go back to it and over and over again. And I would suggest that this situation can be compared to something like that. And what's interesting about that is that in that situation, then the best way to solve it would be to just finish the war. And I have to ask the question, how is this war not done after 500 years? How is there not a winner? And I guess the logic of the episode is that it's because they don't blow up buildings. It's because they don't destroy capital and all those things that they can keep doing it. But we'll just have to pretend to go along with the population issue. we'll just have to like ignore that.
Again, this was I don't know how long the episode was. Back then they had fewer commercials. I think it was like 48 minutes, 49 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. They only had 49 minutes. They did a lot with 49 minutes. But one of my other questions, based upon human history, is this a war where all 500 years there was no technological innovation in fighting the war?
Yeah.
Right. Because are those the same, the bombs? I mean, historically, we built, and the Russians built, the famous Tsar Bomba, like the biggest nuclear weapon ever made. I mean, we built bigger bombs. We build more sophisticated bombs. Right now, there's a lot, 10, 15 hot wars going on in the world. Two of them get more attention than others. But just in Ukraine and the Middle East, we can see, just like in World War II, accelerated technological sophistication of weapons. We went from biplanes to jet planes in just basically 6 years, right? And many other innovations. Right. The wars in Ukraine and Middle East have introduced a whole new, weapons that existed, but like, wow, you can do this with them. It's amazing. So do they have some sort of agreement that they negotiated saying, okay, not only will we do this sort of substitution, but like you can't claim you have, because you'd have to claim it, right?
Yes, exactly. I was thinking about this during the episode. I was thinking about this. They say
you wouldn't have all the money you save on R&D.
yes. Okay. So Anon 7 says, the Enterprise was hit by a tri-cobalt satellite explosion or something like that. And it's like, does this weapon exist or is it completely theoretical?
You're just playing a war game, right? Like a board game, people who play Warhammer 40K miniatures.
And then when it's over,
Stalingrad on with hex counters. But see,
Right.
that was part of the. I mean, this is where Spock was right. I mean, this is such a level of sophistication. But they must have agreed in the treaty somewhere. Must be a clause 27 that says nobody can innovate
Yeah.
weaponry
Yeah. That has to be
past
true.
what we have at our starting point.
Yeah, because
Because
what if you go,
it would
what if you
become
go,
ridiculous then, right?
I have a bomb that destroys all life on the planet. Boom.
Yeah. Go all kill yourselves right now, every single one. Yeah, you couldn't do
It's
that.
fine.
Yeah.
Unalive yourself, Professor. Please. No, I'm just kidding. It's
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
It's
I
fine.
mean, well, I mean, yeah, you're right. But the point being that these questions, they're not meant to say like, oh yeah, they made this continuity error, the stupidity, or the plot
Right.
hole, or something like that.
Right.
All of it is still possible. I mean, if 500 years ago, when whoever came up with this idea on both sides, because it took two to have this
Yeah.
agreement, and it took two to
Yeah.
trust each other, right?
And
That was
and
the other thing.
and
They trusted each
and
other enough to put this in place.
and Professor, it takes two to agree to an insane prolonged conflict and or Cold War. Right?
Yeah.
To get a little pretentious. But anyway, go on.
No. I just it's probably the most comprehensive treaty that's ever been worked out in the history of the universe.
It
I can say
is.
that with confidence, knowing only one planet, but like, wow, they
No,
really covered a lot.
it really is. Like I've said it before, but I'll say it again. This is an idea that is a great science fiction concept. It could be a novel, it could be anything. And there are multiple episodes of the original series that are like this. An episode which I want to talk about with you later on, which can be compared to this one, is City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes.
Not only is it a great story in and of itself, but what it says about war is very interesting. And with this episode, we'll go ahead and get to this because I forgot to mention this in the description of the episode. At one point, when Kirk is being held captive, the Anon 7 is on the communications with Scotty, who is in charge of the ship while they're gone. And this is really stupid of him, but he has Kirk in the room. And so Kirk goes, Scotty, General Order 24. Oh, they get him off. And it's like, what was that? It's like, General Order 24 is that we bombard the planet with photons and phasers until everything is dead. Now, I'm not going to use the word for YouTube purposes, but there's a word that would describe. And it's generally frowned upon if you do it at all. There's almost no one really is ever okay with it in any situation. It's a G word, right? And they're going to do it. They're going to kill, we'll just say it. I think it's okay to just describe it. They're going to kill everybody on the planet. That's kind of insane that that's a thing in Starfleet. And so before we move on with the logic of that, I want to ask you a question, Professor. Is General Order 24 really a thing? Or is it a bluff? Much similar to, spoilers, the Corbomite maneuver, where Kirk pretends that the Enterprise has a thing in it that if you blow it up, it'll somehow blow you up too. He just makes that up. Is General Order 24 a real thing? What do you think?
Yeah, let me approach that just slightly indirectly, because
Sure.
I have in my notes here, Anon 7 is panicking, and he
Oh yeah.
and says that Vendikar will attack in earnest when they find out that people aren't really dying, for example, right?
They're not going into the machines. Yeah.
Yeah. So that implies that both sides have stored and available actual weapons.
Yes.
So when I was earlier saying like, gosh, they're saving so much money on their defense budget, actually you could argue, I guess they're spending much more because
they're spending more than they have to
keep up. Well, they're not technologically innovating. That must be true. Okay, so they're saving money on like having to spend a huge R&D, and then, like for example, during the 20th century, a whole new group of warships was developed, and then another new group, and then you couldn't use your 1917 warships in 1950. So like the amount of money spent
Right.
on navies by the United States and the Soviet Union, and to some lesser
Right.
extent, Britain, France, China, and so on, was huge. But so you do save money because you don't have to deploy new things. But it does imply that both sides believe the other side has real weapons that they could
Yeah.
use if they wanted to. So that's the threat. It's
Yes.
not just a gentleman's agreement and that's it. You know,
Right. No, there's a
there has to
threat.
be a real threat
It's
or not.
similar
It
to,
wouldn't work.
it's kind of similar to Doctor Strangelove. We were talking about earlier, the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah.
Or not the Doomsday Device. Doomsday Machine is Star Trek, but the Doomsday Device, like they like, if you attack us, we're just both going to blow up. It's sort of this like agreement that's been made that no matter what happens, there'll be consequences if you don't keep up the agreement. I
But you got to tell
Yeah,
the other side you have a doomsday machine. So
yeah,
here,
yeah,
both
yeah.
sides, that's the conceit in Doctor Strangelove is the Russians hadn't told the U.S. yet that they had one.
Right,
So,
right,
uh,
exactly.
but so to your point about General Order 24, I am not a Star Trek super lore person. I've not read every comic book or watched every series. Is General Order 24 brought up again?
Um, to my knowledge, it is
Yeah,
never brought up again ever. And again, you could argue that they're still developing the continuity for the show, so maybe they just threw it out, and
right.
that's why they don't remember. Like for instance, maybe they just forgot about the Prime Directive because technically, even going onto the planet once they say don't come onto our planet is breaking the Prime Directive. Maybe they just forgot about a lot of stuff. They said we're just gonna. Another example of that. This episode, Spock has psychic abilities that you don't normally see him having. He puts his hands onto a wall and he gets the guard to go, ugh,
Yeah, I've seen
ugh, and
that
he like goes
before
to
in
the,
a couple other episodes where he can like go through like matter a little bit. Like not
he
it's
might
not
so
it's like Bluetooth. Spock has a
yeah,
early
yeah. So
form of
like I
a
buy it
Bluetooth,
because
you know.
I buy it because the Vulcans or Vulcanians, as he calls them in this episode, can do the mind meld, and therefore they must have some kind of empathic or psychic abilities because that.
Yeah.
So
And it
I
leaks
buy
out.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I buy it, but it doesn't really happen again. There might be another episode where he does this, but I don't. It's very rare, is what I'm saying. So that's an example of this
By the way,
episode.
General Order number 23 is when you go to a new planet, you should wash your vegetables. Which I just, I don't know why they put them in that order, but
General
Star Trek
General
fans
Order General
we could
Order
come up.
22. There's just so many general orders. General Order number 1, by the way, is the Prime Directive, for those of you who are wondering. But
Yeah.
uh
I'm sure.
I
I'm sure people can look this up, and somewhere, a Star Trek fan has made up all the
so
general orders.
yeah, so the wikis have them. So I went on Reddit to try to figure out the answer to this.
Yeah.
And one guy on there proposed that General Order 24, if it exists, may have been created to deal with pandemic situations.
Yes,
And
that makes
that
sense.
makes sense. Yeah, and that makes
Yeah.
sense because we have an episode earlier on, the immunity syndrome, where this whole planet is covered in these little like globby monster things. And you could totally see them wanting to blow up the planet to make sure they don't have to deal with it anymore. So I could see that being a thing. I think it's real. I choose to believe in my head canon that General Order 24 is real. And the reason I think it makes sense for Starfleet is that they're like, look, we're never going to use this, but we need to have a way to threaten people because we're so nice and we're so diplomatic. If they think there's no way we could ever do anything to them, they'll never make peace with us. So I actually like the idea that this is real and that they're like, look, you're never supposed to use this. But if we don't have it as an official thing, no one's going to take us seriously. And so and in this situation, you could argue, oh, it's messed up that Kirk is going to do this, but I actually get where he's coming from because he's like, look, you want to walk into a disintegration machine? Guess what, buddy? I'll make this whole planet walk into a disintegration machine unless you let us get off this crazy merry-go-round right now. And I think that makes total
I was
sense. It's
just
messed up,
thinking,
but
Park, that we have been told the last couple of decades that the Predator universe and the Alien universe are the same universe, right? So
yeah, yeah.
we could be told tomorrow, if they wanted to make a movie, is that or stream a series that Star Trek and Predator and Alien, but Alien, because the first movie Alien was what we're describing, right? That the ship has a self-destruct mechanism, And going back to the other episode that you mentioned, but like if there's infestation, right, you're not supposed to bring anything back to Earth.
Right.
Right. I mean, if we start traveling in the stars, we've had examples certainly in our own planet of what happens when you travel to a new place and you spread disease, and what the damage you can do
Exactly.
across oceans. And
Tribbles.
of course, the War of the Worlds was just based on that idea of
Right.
like people having trouble. They never really do much with that in Star Trek, but like yes, you can understand General Order 24, that the fan who said that, but that was a good explanation for
I
it.
think that's a good argument. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and there are actually a lot of virus episodes of Star Trek or plague episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And so you can see, especially later on, so you could see that working out. But I have to say real quick about the Prime Directive, because we were bringing this up. We'll have another episode where we can talk in more detail about the Prime Directive. I don't consider it a moral or ethical code. I consider it a legalistic code which exists for the purposes of covering their butts.
So the Star Trek legal team, like the Federation legal team, said liability issues here.
Yes!
We can't.
Yes, exactly. You got to have plausible deniability here. And that's the thing, is that they're like, well, it's the trolley problem, and their solution is always don't pull the lever. That's so I think it's okay to bring that up, because I'm going to compare it to General Order 24. I kind of prefer the bluntness of General Order 24, that they're just like, look, we've had quite enough of this. And so I just think it's kind of nuts. But I interpret it as being real based on the fact that, and this is the other thing that someone in that Reddit mentioned, and I'm going to give them major credit for this. Kirk formally cancels the order. Now, if you're making it up, you might do that just to make it look more real. But it makes me think again that it is a real thing that they were actually gonna do, which is pretty crazy to think about. And yeah, so anyway, that's enough for General Order 24. But I wanted to get that out of the way. A lot of people who love Star Trek are going to see this episode and go, "What?" And yeah, it's like TOS is not TNG. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, in the Cold War that we actually went through, which we're not actually out of it. I mean,
No.
Russia is still considered, and I think is a threat, and they still have nuclear weapons, and it's
The new
possible that they might use them. I mean, we're not. It was a pending threat. I don't know how to put it. It was an oppressive threat. Now it's a little bit more distant.
Well, they no longer.
Today. But
they no longer have an ideological backing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But one of the concerns I remember during the Cold War was that the Russians were super organized about civil defense. And so I remember discussions from the US military, from US politicians, in journalism, just in culture, about how the Russian leaders might, the Soviet leaders, Soviet Union leaders might believe that, well, it's not suicide to have a war with America because we would survive. The party leadership would survive in these underground bunkers. I think there was, you remember mutual assured destruction, right?
Of course.
MAD. Yeah.
Mad.
That Strangelove, Dr. Strangelove was based on, really, was this idea that
the absurdity of it. Yeah.
That keeping, well, it was one of those, the villains kind of had a point, and we were one of the villains in this kind of had a point, was that it did keep you from starting a war if you knew that you might be destroyed in that war. Historically, World War I, World War II, many wars were started. The countries that started the war did not say, well, we're gonna be destroyed, but what the heck, let's do it anyway, right? I mean, when Germany
they thought they were going to win
Poland, there's a famous quote that started appearing in Berlin in 1945, which was, I think, I forgot the exact period. It says, "Give me 10 years or give me 5 years and you won't recognize Berlin or Germany." And that was Hitler. Okay, and he was right. You
Right.
would not have recognized Berlin after it being destroyed by Allied bombing and the Soviet,
Right.
the fighting in Berlin. So most countries who start wars don't think it's a suicidal gesture. The Japanese, it was completely delusional, but they had this idea that America was weak and would not fight and would back down. Hitler had the same idea.
Hmm.
They were both wrong, and they both faced, almost existential destruction,
Right.
especially their major cities, because
Yeah.
they didn't understand the other side. During the Cold War, there was more of a surety that if I press that button,
So
I'm
God.
killing my own people as well. I'm disintegrating my own people, not just the enemy.
Right. Now, and I think Cold War, I think there's two wars that are particularly like, if we're actually going to talk about what this episode's like, what it was referencing when they made it, I think the Cold War is one of the two wars it's referencing. And I think the other one is pretty obviously Vietnam. Now, the reason I assume that is because of the casualty thing. And it turns out that this is the case, I can say for a fact. David Gerald, one of my favorite writers and one of the best Star Trek writers, the guy who invented the tribbles, confirmed that the whole idea of the casualty lists came from the news reports of Vietnam. Every night you would get this list of dead, and the whole idea is like you just deal with it. You just go, and I mean, people walking into those machines is like a young man walking into a draft office or walking onto the plane to go. There was a famous underground cartoon at the time called Mickey Mouse Goes to Vietnam. I don't know if you know, but and
Yeah.
when he goes there, he goes all this stuff. He gets to the plane, he goes, and then he's boom, immediately gets shot. And that's what these people are kind of doing when they walk into these machines. I didn't want to lead with that, but yeah.
Yeah. So what Gerald said and what you said is really important. And I'm sorry, I'm going to get wonky here for a second
Oh, it's fine.
because
I love it.
there is actual research evidence that supports part of that thought. During the Vietnam War was really one of the first wars where we did a lot of public opinion polling, right? During World War II, there was some initial public opinion polling, but 1960s was when public opinion polling, the Gallup poll, right? The Roper poll, the constant polling and asking people. And one of the questions that was asked was like, do you support the war in Vietnam? And that it became more nuanced. Well, I want to give a little background here. So years ago, I wrote a book called Photojournalism and Foreign Policy. And I am a visual communication and politics scholar, or researcher, student. Scholar sounds too highfalutin, but and I was very interested in the icons of photojournalism, the ones that you'd remember because they were famous pictures. Because I often would read in the popular press that, oh, this picture affected public opinion. So, for example, during the Tet Offensive, there was a very famous picture, Saigon Execution, a South Vietnamese police general with a pistol executing what somebody who turned out to be an actual Viet Cong officer. Okay.
Oh,
And
well, there you go.
there's no
It's
question,
okay.
this is a very famous picture. I mean, in the sense of it being powerful, being famous, still today, Pulitzer Prize winner, everything there. The question was, did it actually change public opinion? Like you will look up on the internet or ask AI, it'll tell you that it changed public opinion. So I wrote a chapter and then wrote a couple of other things where I said, no, there's actually no evidence of that. And in order to answer that question, I had to go back and look at the public opinion polling. And I don't want to do like a 90-hour lecture here, but
That's all good.
there was some really good public opinion polling that showed that one of the factors which most affected American public opinion about Vietnam was not necessarily the things you'd think were there, but it was the mortality. And when we say casualties, we often use that as mortality, like people being disintegrated,
Right.
unaliving, but like casualty is includes wounded, right? So it
Right.
was the mortality rate of American
Gotcha.
soldiers was one of the most powerful influencers of public opinion. In fact,
Right.
there was a very famous prediction by a social scientist who studied this that said the war in Vietnam will end for the United States when 100 American service people have died for every congressional district. And we, in fact, lost 50,000 plus, which works out sort of to the number of congressional districts at that time. So you could track American public opinion that basically, as the mortality rate of soldiers, think about it. This was people saw their next door's neighbor's son come home, and there was a funeral all
Right.
over America. And of course, it was lumpy, right? Like we know there are parts of the country where there are more people who joined the military, and there are socioeconomic classes, more people joined the military. But
Right.
this connects to this episode, and I don't know whether David Gerald like studied the political science, but it was
Well, he
factually
didn't
true.
write it. He didn't write it, but
More,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, when he was making that statement, right? And I don't
Right.
know whether
Right.
Gene Roddenberry was aware of public opinion polling about Vietnam, among political scientists, but
Right.
it is factually true that for the United States in Vietnam, as the mortality rate went up, support for the war, and by the way, this is much more complicated because there was a conservative anti-war movement. Let's always remember that. There
Right.
was a movement that said, we don't support the war in the way it's being fought. This was the Hawks who said, we're fighting a loser's war here. We're not bombing them enough. We're not killing them. We're not unaliving them
There
enough, right? So there
there
was
are
a Hawk
people who
anti-war,
there are
Lyndon
people
Johnson war movement.
there are people who to this day are like, if we dropped nukes, we would have won.
Yeah. So to the episode, that's what's really interesting here is because in this world, in this universe, in this ideology that they've built there, they have completely separated casualties from support for the war. Now, remember, we only meet 12 people on this planet, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy wander in the countryside and talk and have a town hall meeting of the people of the planet, right? So
Yeah.
we only have what, like the president of the council and 12 ministers and a couple of security guards have to say to us, right? So we have no idea about actual public opinion. Now, General Order number 25 is you shall do a scientifically accurate public opinion poll of the planet,
Yeah. Yeah. Can
which
you
they never
imagine?
do, right? They
Can
never,
you,
in any episode of any TV series,
can,
they never do.
can you imagine an alien comes down to this planet and the only people they talk to are the president and a couple people that work for him? Can
Yeah,
you
I mean,
imagine that?
well, I mean, yeah, take me to your leader was an old joke before you were born. Like an alien
Right.
shows up
Right.
and he's talking to a cow and says, "Take me to your leader." That was a
Right.
funny joke in 1972. Right? I don't know
Yeah.
who came up with it first, but it is in this world. What we know is one of the greatest influences. And again, every country is different. During World War II, the Soviet Union suffered 20 million dead.
Yeah.
Most of it from an enemy,
We
some of it self-inflicted. The war was the war still popular in Russia in 1945? I mean, there's no evidence that like the Russians were about to give up. They were winning the war.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
the
they had
other
no
thing.
choice. They had no
Yeah.
choice, though.
Well,
Right.
you you yourself have said Kirk says you always have a choice, right?
Well, yes, but what I mean is if
Yeah.
the Germans invade your homeland and you know what they're going to do to you once they're in charge, then you kind of have to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I completely agree with that because I mean the Germans knew, the Germans were telling their people that like if the Russians win, if the Soviets win, they're going to
Sure.
kill everybody. So I mean, like,
Well, sure.
yeah. There
No,
was
no, but that's
another graffiti. Berlin was known as a city where people had graveyard humor even before the war. And there's another graffiti that appeared. There's the two graffitis I want to talk about because it relates to this episode in Berlin.
sure.
Because remember, this city is Berlin. This planet is Berlin 1945. They're
Except it's great.
constantly,
Yeah.
except it's metaphorical, right?
Right.
It's indirect, right? Right. So in
Right.
Berlin, there was a joke over the New Year's about giving gifts. There's a tradition of giving gifts, and they said, "Be practical, give a casket." Of course, in this planet, you don't have to do that. And then the other one was, "Enjoy the war because you're going to hate the peace."
Oh my
Oh,
God.
okay. So
That's
this
great.
planet, and remember, Gene Roddenberry was a World War II vet. He'd
Yeah.
flown a plane. He
Mhm.
crashed, and that's
Right.
when he supposedly had his epiphany that he wanted to do something bigger, and for the world, right?
Right.
And I mean, Star Trek. He was a pilot. He was Captain Kirk,
Right.
I
Right.
think, and wanting to solve the world's problems, right? And
Right.
that was a part of all his episodes. I mean, every time Gene Roddenberry, and there's critics of Gene Roddenberry about his writing ability and style, but like every time he touches a script, he wanted to make a moral point,
That's
right?
true.
So
Yeah.
here we have this society that is completely disengaged actual casualties
Right.
from apparently public opinion and the conduct of war.
Yeah, the war can't end because everyone's upset because they're all cool with it. They're not upset by it at all. And one thing, real quick, I want to get back into what you're saying. I don't want to get off of it, but in a way, the one thing that makes this idea a little illogical is that it's going both ways. In the world that we live in right now, this happens a lot, but only in one direction. And so I want to give an example. We talked about Vietnam. We figured out how to solve that Vietnam problem. It's called a drone. Right?
Yeah, both sides have drones, right? So
That's true. No, that's
yeah,
true. I guess I was thinking of it the wrong way because it is, but we don't get drone striked very much. We drone strike other countries from time to time. We haven't really been drone striked in that way. And so we're kind of like in this shining city on a hill that can't really get attacked most of the time. Now, obviously you got 9/11, you got things that do happen. But in my opinion, a lot of societies are like MNER7, but there's really no Vendicar because the other people they're fighting live in a ditch or something like that. Maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe that's
that's
just.
that's the ideology, right? Like, for example, you know, uh, as I understand it, for the war in Ukraine, part of the reason that Russia has continued to fight this war, and there's no evidence whatsoever of like the Russian people rejecting this war. I mean,
Right.
yes, it's a state where it's really hard to have an anti-war movement in that state, but I think we have a lot of real evidence that the war is not. I mean, the people of Russia are still generally supportive of fighting this war. And part of it was Putin made a decision that he was not going to conscript regular Russian middle class kids and even poor kids. Like he was going to recruit prisoners. He was going to people who were in the army anyway. He was
Prisoners.
trying to spare for I'm not going to quote. I don't know his motives, but like I don't think it was all.
You don't approve. You understand.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was smart to shield the population that matters, in terms of public opinion, the ordinary people of Russia, to shield them as much from the casualty total of
Right.
the war. And they've lost a huge number of I don't think it's ever been said, but I mean, it's in the hundreds of thousands of Russians have been killed. And
Yeah.
yet,
When Russia,
we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we don't have evidence that that's made an impact on public opinion yet because of that shielding.
well, there is a
There.
weird thing in Russia where they seem to be cool with losing huge amounts of them. Like whenever there's a war, their solution is that's okay, just throw some bodies at it, and that's how they kind of deal with it. Like in
Yeah,
World War II.
It's been the Russian way of war for hundreds of years.
Right.
Actually, they've used that. But this, I think, one of our takeaways from this episode. I mean, I believe it's actually announced, and again, I don't know how many people per year self disintegrate or go through assisted. We call it AD, assisted disintegration, self assisted disintegration. The casualties, it's mentioned that millions of people have died, right?
Right.
And I don't know, like, is
Three
that every, again,
3 million that day, I think.
yeah, 3 million that day. Now, again, it's not possible that that's a good day or a bad day. That can't be an average day, because even
Right.
planet Earth would run out of, 8 billion divided by 3 million. I mean, we'd run out of
Yeah.
people within the year, right?
He even says,
I
he
think.
goes, casualties are very high, but our defenses are firming. And it's like, what do you mean? What do you have to
Yeah.
firm
What
from?
does
Anyway,
that
but
mean? Because we've just said that
I
there
don't
can't
know
be
what
any
that means.
technological innovation.
I don't know
So
what that means.
you can't just say, oh, you know what? But see, this goes to the future of Star Trek, because one of the problems when I mean, there was a little bit of a problem in the original series, but then in TNG, which was a good show for a lot of seasons,
It's a great show.
They started using science magic, where they'd say, get into a problem, and then Geordi would say, oh, you know what? All we have to do is reverse the polarity on the
Yes.
blah 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 blah, blah thing,
If
and
I
then
can if
suddenly
I can
this will
ricochet
happen.
that off the
Yeah,
quantum
yeah,
field, and I can use it's all a bunch
yeah,
of crap. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So what again? What is just think about it. This is the most trusting war in the
Yeah,
history of the world, like
for
the
real.
history of the universe, that we trust everything the other side tells us. Now, maybe they have these sophisticated. I mean, I think they say this in some way, right? That there's very, very sophisticated monitoring systems,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like
That's the
the
only thing.
enemy
Yeah.
can monitor these things. They know that these
So
people are disintegrating, for example.
I choose to believe that each government made it together, and they made it in such a way that there's no way to fake it. That's what I choose to believe.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing is that, like, the really funny idea is, if you think about it, right? How does a mini R7 know that Vendikar is really keeping up its end of the deal, except for this machine? So we assume that the machine is telling the truth because that's the conceit of the episode. But what if they're just like, oh my God, you were doing that for real?
Now, Clark,
Like,
I'm going to tell you something now, but you can't
mm,
tell anybody. Like, I mean, our audience has to keep this a secret. That whoever's watching this, you cannot tell anybody this.
do you
But
hear that,
like,
guys? Don't say
imagine
nothing.
this. This is a secret here. Imagine this episode remade today, a reboot version of this episode. I will tell you what the ending would be. There is no enemy.
Oh, they made
This
him
is
up.
all a plot of the government to stay in
Oh,
power and to
that's
keep
so clever.
everybody in a war economy on edge. That would have
I
been
love it.
the early 20th first century version of this plot,
I
because
love it.
the government is always scheming, right? We
Yes.
just saw. I mean, I don't think you watched it. I don't. Maybe we. I mean, I could force myself to watch it. War of the Worlds, the
I'm
perhaps
not watching
worst
that.
movie of the year, according to everybody who's
Yeah.
watched it.
Right.
Um, and I don't think I'm giving anything away to say. There's a government conspiracy in every movie nowadays. I mean,
Mhm.
whenever the government is involved in anything,
Right.
the scriptwriters think it's clever to say, and it's, by the way, it's a government conspiracy. So, but back
Government
then in the
conspiracy and
60s,
corporate
they were still
conspiracy. Yeah.
innocent. And so they could
Right.
have governments that like did things sincerely. They disintegrated their own people sincerely without any duplicity. But today's reboot version, there is no enemy. There's no, the enemy planet was
Yeah.
destroyed long ago, like physically destroyed.
Yeah.
And the government has been keeping this up for 412 years
Right.
just to trick the people.
And I gotta
Could that
say,
still be true? Is that
could it?
possible?
Yeah, it could. I don't know. Like, we never see the Vendikaris. We never see the people from Vendikar. I don't think. Yeah, we never see them in the episode. So we have
Yeah.
no idea. What if a non-7 doesn't know it's fake?
Why doesn't the Starship Enterprise say, hold, please, and go contact Vendikar?
Yes. Yeah. Hey, can you confirm to us that this thing is actually a real deal
Yeah.
that you have? You know, and it's like, yeah, I agree. It's interesting. And a lot of these things are easily answered by just saying the episode focused on specific things. It left everything out. But you know what, though? This is one of the reasons I love this episode because there's so
Yeah.
much to think about and so many questions to ask.
This was on primetime television.
Right.
Remember, I mean, there were intelligent shows back in the 1960s where nobody's saying that they didn't have anything thoughtful or insightful. There was
Twilight
wonderful
Zone we talk
drama,
about all the time.
Twilight Zone, yeah, the wonderful dramas and comedies. They're very intelligent, but like this is a big deal, you know.
It
This
is.
is for this kind of thought and spurring people to consider their own situation. We've talked before that J.R.R. Tolkien, excuse me, had a
JJ.
wonderful way to put this. Yeah, he said he didn't like it when people took his writings as allegory. He said he didn't like when somebody said, "Oh, yeah, you know, Sauron is Hitler," and that was too simplistic for him. He was an English professor. Remember, he was a
Right.
sophisticated guy. He said what he liked was if his work could be applicable to future generations and to
Right.
future situations. And I think that was the genius of Star Trek. Yeah, sometimes like the episode where they met the people who were the two men who were fighting, and one was half black and half white. Sometimes
That's the
they
most ridiculous.
really they were a little bit too,
Hmm.
hey, this is
Hmm.
actually, America and its race issues today. I mean, that's a little
Right.
too hard hit too over the top. But they were always trying to be sophisticated, to be
Right.
comprehensive, to raise these questions. And Spock gets to say what he did. And McCoy
Right.
is more passionate, saying, "No, this is terrible. This is evil." And Kirk is more like, "Yeah, I can see these things. I understand." It's just so well done for
It
a
is.
1960s TV show, and it's endured. And we're talking about it all these years later.
We're still talking about it right
Almost
now. And yeah,
almost 60 years later, right?
right. Right.
Incredible.
This is one of the best episodes of the series. Um, to somebody, one of the writers of the original series who moved on to TNG, Dorothy Fontana, DC Fontana,
Yeah,
said when we
great,
were
great,
making,
right?
she's great. And when she said when we were making Star Trek, we were trying to write serious drama. We were not trying to make something for children. We were trying to make something that was high
Yeah,
level intellectual. And they succeeded. I mean, if people who make Star Trek now should watch this episode again because it's genuinely thought provoking in a way that you don't, and it's not like you said, it's not like the half black half white episode because I think that's called "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield" because it's not in your face. You can interpret it to be about Vietnam, but you know what? We're talking about it right now in comparison with recent conflicts. Anything you want, because that's how deep the idea is, and I just have to give them credit for that. That's so incredible. I would highly recommend this episode. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. A couple of quick notes. When Kirk finds out what they're doing, there's this really funny moment where the camera like kind of moves around him, and he's like, "Are you for real?" Like he just has this moment of like, "What? You do this on purpose?" And the reason this is so great, and the reason Kirk's actions in the episode make sense, is because we learn in Dagger of the Mind, I think that's the episode name, that he grew up on a colony where at some point it was like I don't know if they were socialist or what, but they eventually they ran out of food or they're running out of food, and the leader of the colony killed half the people as like a logic measure.
right.
And so Kirk forever is like there is never an excuse to just kill people. You have to figure out a way out of it. And so that's really wonderful that that's consistent in this episode, that he does that. Again, I love that she's like, you can't do that. I've done it. I've done it. I did a video on masculinity, and I used this episode as an example of how Kirk is a great masculine figure, and I recommend that you watch it again. I don't know how that I have that much else to say about it, and I know that you have limited time, Professor. So if there's anything else you want to say, please.
No, I think that this is a great story. Let's just start out with that, right?
Mhm.
or end with that. It's a great story. It's a riveting episode. There's interesting dialogue, interesting sets, and yeah, you have some of them. I wish that the guards didn't have those pointy hats, and
Yeah.
maybe I mean again, that's all fine.
Mhm.
What a great story! What a thoughtful
Great
story! What
story.
an original story! What an exciting story! It brings out the best in your principal characters. McCoy, Spock, and Kirk are all fantastic here. Scotty, as the suspicious, wily Scott,
Right.
is excellent in
He gets
his
to be in charge of the ship while
support.
they're gone,
Yeah,
which is always
yeah,
fun.
yeah. It really works, and it's also as this extra added important attraction, which I think would make Roddenberry and the makers at happy, is that it's still applicable. We can still use it.
Right.
I don't think I think I'm quoting a lot of people. Violence does solve problems, but violence is the easiest way to
Right.
solve a problem. It's not necessarily the best way. And I think that this episode was challenging people in the 1960s, but also people in the 2020s. Is there a smarter way to solve problems than violence? We sort of shouldn't we be doing that in 2025?
Right.
But we don't know. But we're challenged. That's what great art does. Great art challenges.
Right. Right. And yeah, I would last note I would just say is next time you look at a big list of dead people, think about think about this episode because
Yeah.
it's not just a list of dead people. It's a list of people that were marched into a machine. But whatever. That I'm getting all pretentious and saying we'll just check it out at that. Thank you so much for being here, Professor. I don't know how long we've even been talking. But thank you so much for being here. This was so fun. I really want to come back and do another episode when to talk about like all of the really interesting episodes. And next time I want to talk about the Doomsday Machine, which is one of my favorites, starring William Wyndham, who was awesome in Night Gallery, which I did a video on. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Professor. I'll let you go and I'll stay on the stream a few more minutes. And yeah, I mean, can't wait to do
Thank
another one.
you. Take care, sir.
I'll see you. Let's see. All right. Well, I think that went well. Well, I think that went well. I think that was a fun discussion. I hope some people enjoyed it. I have a couple more comments here, so I'm gonna respond to them really quickly. Should have used Anthony Rubio. Anthony Ruby said, sorry, did I say Rubio before? I'm sorry if I did. I probably mixed it up with that restaurant. Anthony Ruby says, should have used Aztec Spanish War for time reference. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different, like we were talking about, there's a lot of different examples that could be used in this episode. I think that's why it's interesting. Mischief Ninja says, hi. Hi, Mischief Ninja. I know who that is, by the way. What's up? um, yeah, so I don't know. I thought this was really fun. And you know, I hope that I hope somebody enjoyed this costume because it's hot as hell in here. It's literally these are literally pajamas too. I was looking for a costume when I was going to go to Fan Fest and I was going to be dressed. I ended up going without a costume, unfortunately, but I was looking for a costume and I found this and I was like, pajamas. The original series, like they're basically wearing pajamas, so it makes total sense to me. So I have this now, but I think that it's time to end the stream. So thank you guys who were here for watching, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one. For those of you who care, I promise that the new video will be out this Friday. It's based on a Twilight Zone episode, and it's going to be a pretty long video. So I hope you enjoy it, and then I'm going to jump right back into some shorter stuff. I my favorite season is here, so I promise I'm going to have some good stuff for you. So I hope you enjoyed that, and just remember, right? Numbers are more than numbers. All right, guys. See ya.